Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned. I thought, let's try a different intro today. There's not really any way that you can kind of like really mix that intro up unless you kind of ebb and flow it. So, should we start over again? Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today, and where I often read meditations. So let's get into some meditations today. Today is October 15th. Oh my God, we're almost halfway through the month. 31 days in October. Halloween is coming. Okay, so let's see what the meditation for today says. October 15th. Yesterday, I think I read the one from the day before. Letting go of chaos. Oh, this is a good one. What was the one from yesterday that I did not read? Controlling versus trust. Well, let's read Letting Go of Chaos first, and then maybe we'll go back and we will read Controlling versus Trust from yesterday, because this one's pretty short. Letting Go of Chaos, October 15th. No good work comes from unrest. Unrest, fear, anger, or sadness may motivate us. These feelings are sometimes intended to compel action, but our best work emerges after these feelings have been replaced by peace. We will not accomplish our task any sooner or any better by performing it out of a sense of urgency, fear, anger, or sadness. Let go of unrest. Let peace fill the void. We do not have to forfeit our power, our God-given personal power, or our peace to do the work we are called upon to do today. We will be given all the power we need to do what we are meant to do when it is time. I feel like I remember reading this one on video. I don't know why. I'm having this like deja vu moment. Let peace come first, then proceed. The task will get done naturally and on time. Today I will get peaceful first and let my work and life emerge from that base. It's so interesting reading this because I just had therapy, and then like as soon as I got done with therapy, I was like, I feel so peaceful, and then I started making my videos. So I don't know if that's what it's talking about, but I mean that's kind of what it's talking about. You know, it's interesting, this whole idea of chaos. I was definitely somebody that grew up in times of chaos. And I think how I define chaos and how I grew up in chaos is probably a little bit different than how other people would define having grown up in chaos. Like, I know people that every day for them was chaos. Every day that they came home to neglect and abuse. Every day that they came home to fear and anger. I have many, many people that I know in my life that was their experience growing up. My chaos was a little bit different than I grew up in. My chaos was that I never knew what I was walking into with a mother that was an alcoholic. I never knew if I was going to walk into my mother being like drunk and passed out, or like her friends being over and them drinking, and I didn't know if we were going to have dinner that night. And that, I'll be honest with you, that was very rare that happened. You know, I talk about those times of my mother being an alcoholic, but that was less often that happened. But I didn't know, because when it did happen, it was so bad because, you know, you're talking about, you know, elementary school, and my mom's passed out in bed, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if we're going to have dinner tonight. Like, is she okay? Like, is she going to die? Like, I don't know. Like, as a kid, you're scared of that stuff, right? But I never knew what I was walking into, because most nights I would walk in and be Little House on the Prairie. You know, she'd make dinner with a salad and bread and a glass of milk, and then we would talk about it afterwards. But I never knew what I was walking into. That was where the chaos ensued, right? Was at home, because at school, I was being bullied every single day. And I had no teachers that were protecting me from it, you know? And so I was being bullied every single day at school and being called names and put down, and I really didn't have that many friends. And so home was my safe place, and home is my refuge. I never knew what I was walking into. I didn't know if I was walking into mom being drunk and passed out, or if I was walking into Little House on the Prairie, let's read a book tonight, let's watch a movie. And I craved those moments, you know? I craved those moments from my mom. But I think the chaos came in. I never knew what to expect. And as a younger child, too, you know, like my parents were getting divorced. They were separated, I think, when I was like 5 or 6. Their divorce was very long. It was like several years that the divorce went on. At that time, you know, I was one of the only kids in my school, and definitely in our neighborhood, whose parents were going through a divorce. I think I was the only one in the neighborhood whose parents were going through a divorce or had ever been divorced. And so I didn't really know how to expect that. I can remember actually when my mom, one of her lifelong friends, moved in across the street from us. And they, at the time that they would have moved in, I don't know how old I would have been, but it was a couple years after my parents got separated. And she was actually married to her second husband. And so her kids were from her first husband. Her daughter became one of my very dear friends. And so, but I can remember they were kind of like an anomaly. So if I was born in 72, this would have probably been about 1980. And I can remember when they moved in the street, like, people were like, oh my God, like, she's divorced. Like, this is her second husband. Like, that's their stepfather. Like, that was kind of a weird thing in our neighborhood. I mean, it was like 2-parent homes, no divorce. So I remember when they moved in and everybody was like, kind of like, oh my God, like, like, they're divorced and that's the stepfather and all this kind of stuff. It was like this big deal. I remember. I don't know why I remember that, talking about this. But I can remember, like, on top of all this, my parents being divorced, like, I mean, I grew up in the era where, like, today, divorce is rampant. I grew up in an era where not only was I bullied at school for being effeminate, not only was I bullied at school for this, but I was bullied at school. Kids would look up to me and say, well, at least my parents love each other. At least my dad still lives at home. I had kids say that to me on a regular basis because they knew that I was, you know, my parents were divorced and things like that, or going through a divorce. And so I had kids that said that to me. Like, you know, Peter's dad doesn't love him. He moved out of the house and whatever. I mean, I grew up in that generation. So on top of being bullied for that, being effeminate, being bullied for being gay, being called every name in the book, being physically afraid of my life, then I'm going home and I don't know what I'm walking home to. I mean, I was a walker in elementary school, and I can remember walking from school home. I mean, I can see it in my head right now. It's just like from the school to our house and we to our street, and then I turned left, and then we lived in the cul-de-sac. And I can remember that walk home and walking it by myself, and I can remember, like, as I got closer and closer, so, like, our street was, like, the very last street before you rode the bus, and so I was, like, the farthest that you would go, and I can remember the further and further I would go, you know, other kids would be walking around me on the other side of the street, and then they'd kind of, like, turn into their house or turn in their street, and so, like, the last, I would say, part of it was just me by myself, and I can remember that being a very, like, peaceful time for me. It was almost kind of like, as a kid even, I was kind of preparing for myself, like, I didn't know what I was going to walk into. You know, and sometimes I walked into fresh cookies or, you know, muffins that my mom would make. My mom always burned her cookies, but, you know, or whatever, or a special snack she'd make me, or, you know, like, you know, music playing, or, you know, whatever. And sometimes I'd walk into music playing and my mom dancing and being drunk with her friend in the living room. And all of her friends were married at that time, so they'd go home to their husbands, and then my mom would be still drinking, and that's what my night looked like. And so it was a lot of chaos. Well, I got used to that chaos. I got used to maneuvering through that chaos. I grew up in that chaos. That chaos, to some degree, that not knowing, became very comfortable for me. It became very safe, because what I learned is how to maneuver in the world of chaos. I learned how to maneuver in the world of not peace and serenity, but total chaos, and not knowing. It's almost like, you know, when you learn, like, what you have to put on to go through the world and protect yourself. So it was like I was slowly learning at school to not do things to bring attention to myself, to stay silent. I was a very quiet kid in school, you know, like, I get in trouble every once in a while if I had, like, one friend in the back of the room that I would talk to, but most of the time, like, I didn't talk at school. I was very quiet. I learned very quickly, don't bring attention to myself. So I was learning in my life ways to maneuver through this chaos, to the point that it was almost like, look, for example, right now in therapy, I'm doing a trauma narrative on being bullied when I was growing up, because a lot of how I view the world today is through the armor of what I had to wear when I was being bullied, because I looked at the world as like, this is how the world treats me. And so when I was growing up, you know, I'm maneuvering through all this chaos. So then I started using, and I think using, drinking and drugging was one of the ways to deal with chaos. And then I became part of the chaos. And then when I got sober, what I had to deal with was, I'm almost better living in chaos and upheaval than I am living in peace and serenity. Peace and serenity was really, really hard for me to get used to living to for a while. And it was almost kind of like, you know, when you talk about self-sabotage and whatever, like, I can look back in my life, especially, like, I would say the first 4 to 5 years of early sobriety, and I created a lot of situations with people that I was dating or friends or whatever. I created a lot of situations that I almost tried to, like, turn chaotic because I knew how to deal with it if there was high drama and chaos, but I didn't really know how to deal with it otherwise because that was what I was used to. And I've experienced that with a lot of friends of mine that have said the same thing. They're like, I grew up in alcoholic homes. It was the same way. Like, I can deal with solutions, come up with problem solving very quick like that. But to just be peaceful and serene, you know, and so that was one of my goals about 10 years ago. I think it was like 12 years ago that I came back into the rooms of recovery and I was like, I want that peace and serenity. I want that. I don't want to live and seek chaos anymore. And so I did, and I worked really hard on it. I worked really hard to have peace and serenity in my life and not to have a lot of chaos and a lot of upheaval and things like that, a lot of drama in my personal life. I just didn't want it, you know, and today I don't have it. And it's like, I say this a lot, but like peace and serenity are not a luxury to me today. I mean, they're something I have to have. You know, I don't even know what it would look like for me to go back and live in all of that chaos and that upheaval and that drama that I had. Like, I don't know what that would feel like for me. You know, I live a very small life today. You know, I'm with Alex and my dog, Boo Radley, you know, most days. And I see my friend Tanya and talk on the phone to see Caroline once a week and, you know, talk on the phone. I mean, I don't really even leave the house that much. So it's not like there's a lot of chaos coming in. There's not like a lot of chaos going out. I don't know what I would do if I were living in a situation that had a lot of chaos again. You know, I think through marriage counseling, that's one of the things that we, like in learning how to communicate to each other, that we really dealt with, was that I could very quickly and, you know, go to points of chaos. My husband was somebody that was very used to chaos too. So you have two people that are used to chaos. What do you think we're going to try to create? Well, we tried to create chaos because we live better in chaos. That was one of the things that got us to therapy, you know, was that we're going to end up either self-combusting or we're going to get divorced or we're going to work through this. And today, peace and serenity is very, very important to our marriage. I mean, it's something we use those words. We talk about those on a regular basis, right? Like, you know, when we say things, we'll talk about, and I'll say like, well, my peace is important. And Alex will say like, yeah, like our peace and our serenity is more important than this situation, blah, 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 whatever. Those are things that we talk about today. Those are things that we talk about. That's the language that we use. When I talk to my friends today, you know, my sober friends and my sponsor and things like that, peace and serenity are words that I use on a regular basis. Those are normal words for me. I cannot go back to living in chaos. I just can't. You know, and if you're somebody out there that lived in chaos and today you have peace and serenity, bless you for that. And you've done a lot of hard work on it, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't go back to it. It's like seeing a huge wave coming at you on a beach. It's like you can see it coming and you're like, I want no part of it. I have literally, in all honesty, in the last 29 years of my life of sobriety, I've literally ended friendships like that because I was like, there's too much chaos that comes along with it and I can't have it. I can't have it in my life. I'd rather have 2 or 3 people in my life than have chaos. It's not worth it to me. Because there's so much that comes along with it. There's so much uneasiness and being unsure. I don't need that many people in my life today, but I definitely don't need chaos. I definitely don't need an upheaval and drama in my personal life and this and this and this. And I don't need all that. It makes me feel uneasy. I want to know where I stand with the people that are in my life. I want peace and serenity in my life today. And I have it, thankfully, you know. But to have peace and serenity, you have to accept that from other people and you have to contribute peace and serenity to other people. You have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. You can't expect other people to hand it to you. You also have to be part of that, which means you don't contribute to the drama. You don't contribute to the chaos in other people's lives. You know, and I know I have a drama channel. I'm talking about in my personal life, okay? So you can't contribute to that, right? You have to take responsibility and accountability for your actions so you don't continue it. You can't bring chaos to other people's life and expect that you're not going to have chaos show up on your doorstep. And that's one of the things I really had to learn. If I don't want to live in chaos, I can't be part of chaos. If I want to live in peace and serenity, I have to live through peace and serenity. But I don't want to go back to those days, you know, because chaos was a language that I spoke. It was a lifestyle that I lived for many, many years. I grew up in chaos. And in retrospect, I look back on that, you know, and I think this is one of the reasons why my cousin Caroline and I, we are interested in how our mothers were raised and things like that. Because when I look back on their childhoods, our mothers were raised in chaos, you know, something that I didn't know till much later in my life. And now looking back on it, what makes so much sense about that is knowing that my mother and my aunt were raised in chaos. It makes sense why they performed in chaos in their lives. Caroline said, you know, we'll say the same thing. We were both raised in chaos. What's crazy about that, right, is that when you look at my grandmother's life, my grandmother, whose mother died when she was very young, and she was the oldest sibling that had to take care of all of her siblings, and her stepmother came in late in life, and her stepmother, who was beyond cruel, my mom would tell me all these stories about her, my grandmother grew up in chaos. So my grandmother learned how to function in chaos. Then she created chaos, and my mother and my aunt grew up in chaos. And then they created that, and my cousin and I grew up in chaos. At some point, you have to stop the pattern. At some time, you have to stop the cycle. It's why Caroline and I have stopped the cycle. It's why it's really important for us to realize how important peace and serenity are in our lives. It's not a tradition that we want to carry on, you know? And Caroline has done a fantastic job of stopping that with her kid. And it's important for me not to carry it out in relationships that I'm in. And Caroline and I, peace and serenity is something that is so important to us today, you know? And not repeating that pattern going forward. And I think that goes with anything in your life, is looking at what patterns did I learn, you know? And I can remember from the movie, what's the movie? Postcards from the Edge with Meryl Streep. I love that movie. And there's a part in there with Gene Hackman, and she's talking about her mom and blaming her mom. And he says, you know, you can blame your mom, and she can blame her mom, and she can blame her mom, but at some point you have to stop blaming and just take responsibility for what's going on. And I think that that's so poignant, right? That we can continue to blame. And I think that that's where understanding comes from. And I think that's what's important for me, like in doing this trauma narrative, is understanding where it starts, but then also understanding it enough to say, and it goes no further. It stops right here. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys. I hope that you're having a blessed week, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.